Hello, it's Friday, August 23rd, 2017 at 1 o'clock Eastern Time, and this is Higher Ed Special Edition. Happy back to school time, everyone. The smells of freshly sharpened pencils and iPads just out of the box are in the air. I am your host, Andrea Boyle-Tippett from the University of Delaware. On today's live broadcast, we're talking about employee communications in higher education. In this session, we get introspective and learn from someone who oversees best-in-class communications for an institution that's the size of a small city, Duke University. Today's Higher Ed Special Edition is part of the Higher Ed Live Network. Episodes offer you direct access to the best and brightest minds in education. Be a part of the live broadcast by sharing your knowledge and questions. Participate in today's discussion by tweeting with the hashtag HigherEdLive. Higher Ed Live is produced by Stoner, a digital-first agency committed to tailored solutions that drive real results. Do you need help getting full buy-in for a website redesign? We've all been there. A higher education website checkup with Stoner will provide objective feedback and give you and your team a clear roadmap for improving your site. We're tweeting out a link shortly so you can learn more. All of our episodes are free and easy to access in the video archives at higheredlive.com, or take it with you on the go by subscribing to the podcast. Today's episode is made possible by PRSA's Counselors to Higher Education Professional Interest section. Counselors to Higher Ed provides PR professionals working in colleges and universities with a few things: publications, insights into the best ways to promote the value, power, and appropriate role of communications and marketing functions within institutions of higher ed, and also terrific networking opportunities and virtual events like this one, but we also have stellar in-person events, including our West Coast Forum, which is coming up very soon, September 14th and 15th in San Francisco. And if you register by the end of the month, you can take advantage of a saver rate. The event includes 6 sessions, a hosted networking event, snacks, breakfast, lunch, and topics this year include strategic planning, market research and measurement tools, fundraising campaign communications, and managing free speech issues on college campuses in the era of political polarization. Check out prsa.org/WCFCHE, so West Coast Forum, Counselors to Higher Ed, to learn more. And we'll also tweet out that link for you because that's a lot of letters in one span there. And now let's chat with today's guest, Leonora Manai. Leonora is the Communications Director for the Office of Communication Services at Duke University. She also serves as the editor for Working at Duke and co-editor for Duke Today. Prior to joining Duke, she was a staff writer for the St. Petersburg Times, now the Tampa Bay Times in Florida. Leonora is always looking for a good story that can make a difference and affect positive change. She received a certificate in documentary arts from Duke's Center for Documentary Studies after producing a short film about mothers who support each other through grief after losing a child to murder. Currently, she is pursuing a master's degree in liberal studies at Duke University. Leonora, welcome.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Andrea. Thank you for the introduction. Can everybody see me right now? Can you
I think everybody can see you.
Okay, great. Just want to make sure. I am so pleased for the opportunity to be able to talk with everybody today. We're going to be talking about internal communications. So what does that mean? We're going to get into that in details on the slides. But your internal communication should really be a part of any comms plan. Essentially, you want to be able to engage and inspire your audience so that they feel informed and empowered, heard, seen, so that they understand change and that so they feel part of your institution. In the end, that's going to cultivate trust and credibility and make them feel a part of a great community. So we try really hard here at Duke to do that. I'm part of a great team, so I'm sitting here talking today, but it's certainly not just me. It's a great team and a lot of colleagues that we have here at Duke who make it happen. I will admit this is my first ever Google Hangout, so bear with me if I have any technical difficulties. My hope today is that you get an idea for what we do at Duke, and if you can just take away one tip or one practice that helps you in your internal communications, that would be great. I'm also available after this to answer any questions. Just hit me up on email or Twitter or LinkedIn. I'd be happy to share the slides or talk with you more offline about it. So I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you so much. We're going to launch right into the presentation now. Everybody see my slides?
You can see your slides.
Okay, great. So what I'd like to do first is just talk a little bit about our agenda today. So Duke is a really big place. We've got 38,000 staff and faculty, and I'm in one of two sort of big central communication offices. There's the Office of News and Communications, which is public affairs, media relations, a lot of the external stuff you would think. And then there's the Office of Communication Services, which I serve in. We've got about 300 communicators at Duke, so there's a lot of people. It's very decentralized, as many of your institutions are. I'm lucky. We've got a small but mighty shop here. Some of you may just be one person, two person shops. So again, whatever you can pull away from this presentation will be great. So a little bit about what we're going to go over today. I'd like to provide some context for you. We're going to go back 13 years for how internal communications really started at Duke. We're going to go through some tools and practices. I'd like to show you some examples from working at Duke, and then we're going to go over metrics. For me, just a little bit about me so you know who I am and why I'm talking to you today. I'm a former newspaper reporter. I worked at the St. Petersburg Times for about 10 years. It's now the Tampa Bay Times before I joined Duke. Working at Duke and Duke Today, I've received numerous awards from CASE. So again, I'm just, that's just part of my excitement and passion for journalism and communications in general. So let's go back to the last, to the context for how internal communications started at Duke. So 13 years ago in 2004, we had a Duke-wide committee that studied internal communications at Duke. And it was a comprehensive review of all of the sort of channels and tactics. And, you know, this team put out an excellent report and with some key findings and guiding principles. And so one of those guiding principles is to make internal communications a priority. The committee also came out with a bunch of operational recommendations, some of which I'll harken back to on the rest of the slides. But what did the committee find? So the committee overall found that many members of the Duke community were feeling overwhelmed with scores of email messages, newsletters, and other information, but they were feeling uninformed, keyword uninformed, about developments that affect their lives on campus. So, you know, the thing here is that we were doing a really good job of distributing information, but not a very good job of coordination and consolidation and connecting the dots for people. The committee also found that there were some 50 print mediums that were being delivered. So you can imagine with so much stuff out there, you know, the committee realized that, you know, problems involving internal comms stemmed from a lack of coordination. So an office within human resources was enhanced with more staff, and it was renamed the Office of Communication Services, where I sit here at Duke. And we set out to improve the flow of information and rethink how best to connect people with the information they need and want from across Duke. So how our office works is we help central administration units like police, parking and transportation, sustainability. HR is our, we live within HR, but HR is our one of our central administration units. So we help these units with their communication needs. So we have a lot of communication planning and strategic support that we provide on that front, but then we also have our editorial and multimedia mediums, the Working at Duke and Duke Today, and our social media channels. So our office does a lot of stuff. But one of the guiding principles for our internal communications is to take advantage of the various mediums to serve our diverse constituents. And we've aligned our communication tools to meet varying needs. So this is just a list of all the stuff that we have. I mean, we've got all under the Working at Duke brand. We have the Duke Today, Working at Duke section online, the Working at Duke publication, and I'm going to go over each one of these channels so you can see them more. And we also have our social media channels. And what I'd like to do is touch on some email and face-to-face in-person communication channels that we use to reach targeted groups. And then I'm going to talk with you in more depth about the Working at Duke brand and the portfolio and all the channels under that. But what this is that you're seeing is, this is the Managing at Duke email that goes to about 6,000 managers on the university and medical center side. So one of the principles of our internal communications practice is to focus on helping the community understand what's happening. Again, it's not just about distribution of information to people. This particular channel or medium, what it does is it helps managers and employees connect the dots and understand decisions, institutional priorities, and other issues. Back in July, I mean, this is just one example. We had the incident in Nice, France. Obviously, we've got students, faculty, staff who may be studying abroad, and so this is an example of a communication that was sent out to let folks know that we were on it and looking to be in contact with folks there. So a Managing at Duke email has been used to communicate everything from terror attacks that affect community members abroad to campus email phishing attacks. And again, it empowers managers to be more successful as communicators. In the last fiscal year, we sent about 80 of these emails to managers. Then managers can meet with their staff and explain decisions and changes and things like that to help staff understand what's happening on campus. Another element of our communications practice is building relationships through trust, and trust through face-to-face conversations. So one of our other ways that we do that is through our town hall forums. We hold these in person and on the web, and with our new president here on board, we'll be looking to host a town hall with him soon, coming up in the next couple of months. What these do, what the face-to-face communication does, is it really allows community members to feel connected to their leaders, and this in turn, as I mentioned earlier, builds trust and credibility and helps the community understand the issues facing the institution. One thing I'd like to touch on too is emergency communications. While it's not a central focus of my presentation today, I wanted to be sure to note that as part of internal communications, our office coordinates safety and emergency communications. So like many of you may have an alert system where, you know, if you have a clearing notice, you send out a text message and an email. We have a very comprehensive approach to our emergency communications, and a big part of that communication is severe weather, which some of you know in North Carolina, an ice storm could shut down or cripple campus for a couple of days. And so we have an internal process to just deal with internal weather incidents and things like that that may just affect the campus in terms of operations. So now what I'd like to do is go over the Working at Duke portfolio, which is the primary component of our internal communications with staff. So we reach employees in a variety of formats that make it easier for them to stay connected and informed. But the theme, style, tone, and mission of our channels remain consistent. We strive to connect the dots for staff and provide them with news they can use. So the key phrase there is news they can use in their work and lives. Over the years, as you're aware, the landscape has changed with the emergence of social media, interconnected devices, and mobile applications. So as the communication infrastructure, so to speak, has changed, we've added and reiterated. We started out with print and online, we've added social media, and we just recently, or last year, added a Working at Duke e-newsletter that goes out to 42,000 people. And so that's all under the Working at Duke editorial portfolio or brand. So let me quickly show you each of these channels so you can get an idea of what they are and what they do. This is just an example of the Working at Duke print publication. It's distributed to all employees at Duke University and Health System. Comes out 6 times a year. This is the August-September issue. We did a Q&A with our new president, Vincent E. Price. And what I loved about this piece is we solicited questions from the Duke community and then posed these questions to President Price. So what it did was there was a two-way conversation, and we solicited the questions from the community and sprinkled in a few from us. So a little bit of background about Working at Duke Print. It has been around since 2006, and it formed after the committee that studied internal communications at Duke. So many publications were consolidated, and then Working at Duke became the primary print publication, and it's typically 16 pages, and it's mailed home to employees on the health system side. A lot of employees on the health system side are mobile in terms of their doctors, nurses. They may not necessarily have a desk, an office, or a mailbox. So we've decided to mail the publication home to health system employees, and it's delivered through inner office mail on the university side. Then over on online, we've got the Working at Duke section on Duke Today. And so this is really our daily news site. And 90% of the content that shows up on the Working at Duke Today section, think of it like a section of a newspaper. There's the overall Duke Today, and then Working at Duke is like the sports section or the local section, or you get the idea there. But 90% of the content here is never in print. And so this is just one example. I'm not sure how you can see it, but we've got a campaign, a Get Moving exercise campaign challenge in January of every year, where we ask staff to form teams or work individually at getting healthy, getting fit, getting their resolutions going in terms of exercise. And the neat thing is we ask people to come up with names of their teams. So, we did a story on fun names, House of Large, Fat Farm, it's all in the name, and we did a story on these fun names, and that was just a fun piece to do and very, very popular. We also, as I mentioned, as the digital landscape, as the communication landscape changed, we got on social media, Twitter. This is an example of Twitter, which plays into our internal communication strategy. We have Working at Duke channels on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Here's a post on Twitter from just this week with somebody, the nursing school tagged us in a picture of the eclipse, which is kind of neat. And I'll talk about this a little bit more when we get to Facebook, but I think it's important. A lot of organizations may not be on social media in terms of for employees, but there's a way to do it. That can be a whole separate presentation. But we've found that our largest audience on social media is Facebook. We've got, I think 4,500 employees following us on Facebook. And one of the strategies we use with Facebook is, when we did an internal communications review a couple years ago, we had a focus group with employees, and they told us that, when they're sitting at home at night going through their social media feed, they don't necessarily want to get institutional news and updates and things like that on their Facebook feed. I mean, Facebook is social, so maybe they don't want to be hearing about policy changes and things like that at Duke. But so what we've done is to address that, we heard that, and so what we do is we post twice on Facebook, in the morning and in the evening, Monday through Friday, and then once on Saturday and Sunday. But during the week, in the morning is when we reserve that post, the morning time, for the institutional content, and then in the evening is more sort of social pieces about employees' passions, or somebody who brings their poodle, an employee who this is actually the case, brings her poodle over to the health system and volunteers. She's a volunteer at the health system and an employee, but brings her poodle over as part of her work, volunteer work. And so we're really happy with how our Facebook channel is going these days. And this is just an example from this week, actually from the weekend, last weekend, when Duke removed the statue of Robert E. Lee from the chapel, and this is important news to share, and so we put it up on our Facebook page. And while we're on the topic, so digital here with social, we also have got the, as I mentioned earlier, the Working at Duke e-newsletter. Again, this goes out to 42,000 people. This is an example of the lead story we did, and I'll talk about this campaign a little later. This was a social campaign we did over the summer, but we asked employees to share their photos, and so this is just a shot of what the e-newsletter looks like. So with all of these different channels to feed, what approach is consistent across the board? So we really deploy a journalistic storytelling approach. We tell stories, we conduct real interviews, we do research, we look at data, we interview people, we include quotes, details, color, context. More importantly, we include people. People are central to our content. I mean, we're not just writing about programs. We're not writing program stories. About the people who are engaging with the programs. If it was just a program story, it's going to be super boring. Nobody's going
to... Eleonora, I'm not hearing you. Are you having a little trouble with your audio?
Pardon me?
I couldn't quite hear you through your last part there. I don't think anybody could hear you. So if you can kind of go back, you were saying that if it's just a program story without any characters, it could be.
Okay. I apologize. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So what I was saying is, employees, whether you're in, development or alumni or in the news office or wherever, or student communications, if you've got a story, if you've got a program or something that you're needing to promote, always find the people behind that program. We let the people tell the story about the program, so it's more consumer quality work. We focus heavily on sharing employee experiences and news and information that they can use in their work and lives to create a very important personal connection. And I want to walk through some examples. This is from the Working at Duke print publication. So when you're thinking about stories, find the hero. There's always a hero in every story. And so Bonnie McManus was a hero to us, and many, many others. When we were telling the open enrollment story, how many of you are asked to write about a topic like open enrollment that may on the face of things be very, very boring, but every year we try to find a way to make it compelling and interesting and useful for people. And one year we got in touch with Bonnie, who is a breast cancer survivor, and she opened up her life to us and told us her story. This picture, you can see she's holding a section of her personal journal. You know, at the time, Bonnie was among 60-something thousand people covered under Duke's health plans. So instead of writing the, you know, boring story about open enrollment begins October 1st and ends October 10th, sign up here, you know, we wanted to connect people with very important information about making health plan choices, and taking a look at your family, your life, and seeing if you need to make adjustments. So how do we report Bonnie's story in the print issue? As I mentioned, we got nosy. We asked to see her diary. We asked for a picture of her while she was going through treatment. The one on the lower right side is of her. We met with her several times. We got lots of details down to, you know, the types of injections she had to get and how much they cost and things like that. So, you know, this could have very easily just been a very boring open enrollment story, but we brought it home and, you know, focusing the article on one employee's battle with cancer allowed us to form a narrative that carried the reader through the story while informing them about Duke's very awesome health benefits. So what were the outcomes of Bonnie's story? We got a bunch of comments, many notes of positive feedback from employees and the Duke community. You know, there's a human connection employees couldn't help feeling as they read the story or just read of Bonnie's struggle and triumph. And so, you know, this is one employee who wrote in who told us that the story placed a strong reminder that she needed to think about her current health insurance choices. So to me and to folks in our office here, I mean, this is a perfect best case scenario where we wrote something that affected one person and made them go back and think, let me go back and look at my health plan and see if I'm adequately covered. So that's a win for us, and it's what we strive to do in terms of our internal communications. Another example for print in terms of just looking for story ideas, dive into data. This is an example of another cover story we did this year about Duke's overall demographics. So we got a report from HR that went over age, race, gender, you know, number of faculty, number of staff, number of foreign nationals, things like that. And so we did a mix of vignettes and infographics, and we were able to mine that data and provide a piece that helps the community understand who their community is. So as I mentioned, we created vignettes off those data points and found an employee to interview to highlight that data. And this is just an example here for workforce aging, which is very interesting that for the first time, our, you know, 38,000 employees or so were pretty evenly split between, you know, millennial, Gen X, and veterans and baby boomers. So also, when we're looking for stories, don't forget to have some fun and bring the world home and localize the global. So earlier this year, Durham was named the hippest city in North Carolina by Vogue magazine. So one of the writers had the idea to go around on campus and do a person on the street and ask faculty and staff and students what they find to be hip about Durham. And so we had them pose with big, I don't know if you can see it here, but with bug eye glasses. We took the photo. This is a professor. He's in front of the chapel, obviously. And we asked them what they loved about Durham. And it was just a neat piece, nice, city Duke relationship piece. And people loved it and shared it on Facebook, things like that. So I mentioned earlier, we also use social media. It's not just pushing out content, but we really try to be participatory. And this is our social media campaign, #DukeTimeOff, that we did over the summer. And we asked employees to share pictures that highlight why time away from the office is important to them. And we had employees share about 450 pictures this summer. and we gave away a couple of great prizes, including dinner at, I think it's the Washington Duke Inn, and a night at JB Duke. But more than that, what this did was, first of all, it's participatory, and people love to participate. And it allowed us, Duke's got a really robust vacation, personal paid leave, personal time off benefit, and it allowed staff and faculty to share fun pictures of their passions, and it also highlighted Duke's very generous time off benefit. And so, you know, that this was a really fun campaign, and this is an example right here of one employee, Michael Palco, who shared this photo at the Outer Banks over Memorial Day weekend. And I love the quote he included: "Always get up early on one day of your Duke time off." I'm not sure I can get up early.
Leonora, I've seen, I agree with you wholeheartedly on vacations when you sleep in, right? I can say that I followed along very closely on Twitter, and I was so jealous of all of the employee photos that were submitted and shared there. And also, that's a reminder to everyone who's watching to tweet any questions that they have as you continue on in your presentation, so because we're going to get to questions at the end, and using the hashtag HigherEdLive.
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
So one thing I want to move on to the importance of metrics. I'm going to try to go a little bit quicker through these, but I can't tell you enough how important it is to study, assess, ask your audience what they want, what they're paying attention to. You know, you can't have an informed communication plan or program unless you tap into your audience and study what they want, but also take a look at how you're doing. And in 2005, I chaired a committee that looked at the state of internal comms in Duke school departments and units. And in general, we found that it's not broken, but there are some areas that we could work on. But overall, the data and anecdotal feedback provided valuable insights to help us align communications better and serve our audience. So one thing, you know, this is just one chart. The good news here is, according to the survey that we did, and we basically surveyed employees and we surveyed communicators for this study. And you know, 84% of staff and faculty feel informed in their department, school, or unit, which is great. But one area for a closer look, which I just love this slide so much, is
oh no, your sound popped out again.
Okay, no problem. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. So I'll just start over. I love this slide. I love the information on the slide, because what it helps us do is align what we're sharing or communicating with what employees want. For us, you know, if we're just sharing things that they don't want to read, and then no one's reading your publication or looking at your content, then, you know, you're not aligning what they want with what you need. So we like to put a little bit of dessert in with the, you know, institutional stuff that we have to share. But this chart shows you that, you know, the top blue line is what staff and faculty want more of, and the green line were topics that communicators are sharing. So, you know, a quick look at this shows that, you know, staff and faculty want benefit stories, but communicators aren't really sharing much of that. They want, you know, staff and faculty want more about professional development, but we're not really sharing more of that, or, you know, schools department and units aren't. So this, you know, a survey like this in your organization is going to help you align the content and the topics with your audience. That's not to say, you know, not to do the institutional stories, which you need to do, but to sprinkle in the stuff that's going to make them pay attention to the institutional stuff. So I want to also talk about print. I don't know, we're probably some of the last standing institution with a print publication. And we always said when we started it that if the data showed that people weren't reading it, well, maybe it would be time to just put everything online. But there is a place for print, and you know, it still works here at Duke. I would like to say and like to think that the reason why it's working is that we're aligning the type of content with the stuff people want to read. If we were filling that publication with a bunch of content that people don't want to read, I'm not sure that the data would be as positive. That's not to say that we're perfect. We're always trying to improve and enhance what we're presenting and giving folks. We've redesigned the publication a few times, but what this slide shows, we do, let me just back up a minute, we do 2 surveys a year, 2 online surveys actually, and we sample 5,000 people. The data, the pool matches our demographic. We've worked with the institutional folks here at Duke, institutional review folks who are the survey experts, to ensure that our questions are not biased. And, you know, you can see that since 2008, since we started, you know, it's statistically, you know, pretty much on par. In 2014, we had an experiment. We sent the publication home across the board, and we found that on the university side, it was tucked inside the open enrollment materials, and folks just didn't read it. They missed it. So we didn't do so well that year in 2014, but that's why we have an asterisk there. So this is just another side, how the print publication helps staff and employees understand their benefits. Again, pretty much consistent. Folks find working at Duke to be beneficial. Again, pretty, you know, consistent there. So overall, you know, you may be wondering, you know, why are these, you know, how do metrics like these translate? Well, you know, as I said earlier, your internal communications plan is going to help your folks, whether you're for students or, you know, development. It's going to help them understand your institution, change the issues. They're going to feel seen and heard. It's, you know, your communication, your internal communication is going to cultivate trust and credibility. And in the end, they're going to be ambassadors for your institution. So, you know, there are many reasons why Duke is on these lists, but, you know, I think that if, you know, your organization and the people in it don't feel great, you're not going to be on lists like these. So I hope that this has been useful, getting a look into our approach and our tools, and I can certainly dive down deeper in lots of things. I mean, the metrics could be their own presentation. There's so much more to go into, but I wanted to hopefully pass along some examples that would help you sort of see what we do here at Duke. And again, I'm part of a great team, and I feel lucky to have the opportunity to present today. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for all that really valuable information. And I could have you dig into the metrics for a long time, because metrics, I'm a super geek about that, but I'll save the audience. But I will ask one question that came through via Twitter. Pete McHugh in New York City had asked, how do you administer the surveys, and any advice for starting a similar survey on a smaller campus? So I know you said that you did the survey via as an online survey, but what was the functionality of that? And what do you think might work for somebody who doesn't have the size that you all have there?
Sure. So I would say don't be worried about the size of the institution. You could have 200 employees, and I think that it's still important to survey them. So we use Qualtrics, the Qualtrics software platform, as part of the survey. And I worked with David Jamison Drake over here, who's great. Give a plug to David, in the institutional survey folks over in that department who are the experts. And so I came up with a bunch of questions and talked with him to ensure that, you know, our questions weren't biased. And you know, I am not a statistician, so I just want to make sure when we're presenting the survey that there's, you know, the strongly agree, neutral. I mean, there's a whole range of things that you can ask. But I'm happy to share the PDF of our questions so you can get an idea of what to ask. You know, there's a whole thing behind asking yes and no questions, and then there's the range questions we ask. We also ask how much of a story people read. So we survey in April and October to get a sense for the content. And then we also ask open-ended questions like, what do you find most beneficial about the publication? What do you find least beneficial? And those are open comments. People can write 500 words if they want to. And I go through each of those. I read all of those. So I hope that helps.
That's very helpful. I'll see about the functionality of getting your PDF to everyone who's watching. It might be something where they can email us at PRSA and we can send it along. I'm not sure about being able to post it online, but I'll try and get an answer.
I could load it up on our box site and then give you that link. And
okay.
I don't know. Or if you want a copy, just email me. My email address is at the end of the presentation. I can just share it individually if that's easier.
Okay. One thought I had while you were talking about the survey questions is that a lot of us are not embedded in HR like you are. And I'm wondering if you think that helps you have a better grasp on what people might want to know and also the sort of information that HR wants to get out there. I know we have a great relationship with HR here, but I'm not in their world day to day, and I might not know what messages are most important and what people on campus need to know about what's going on in their world.
Okay. Yes, it absolutely helps to be in a unit within HR. So just the way the structure is, we support central administration units. So Kyle Kavanaugh, who's our vice president, he oversees, parking, police. And so it very much helps to have the leaderships two floors up. So if you have questions or need to go over things, you can. But we have a really coordinated communication process here. I mean, Duke's a big place. Like I said, we've got 300 communicators or so. And I sit in on the Office of News and Communication staff meetings on Monday. There are communicator meetings, I think like every month. We've got a communicator Facebook page. There's a communicator listserv. And then there's various other executive level communicator teams that meet for lunch or with the public affairs team. So there's a lot of folks, a lot of coordination and collaboration, but it definitely helps that we're in HR and, so I hope that helps.
Sure. How do you go about finding your stories? And then also, how do you go about finding the people that you feature in those stories?
So a couple of things. So the writers on the team, they work, they cover beats, and they develop relationships. I would say much like a newspaper, you get stories by developing relationships with people. It's everything from looking at the events calendar to reading bulletin boards to going to meetings, to being a part of, it's a lot of things. It's asking people to write in. I mean, just this, was it last night? We did a post on Facebook. We've got like 60-something thousand people on our health plan. And so we're looking for employees who cover their spouses, the loves of their lives on their health plan. And we got a bunch. So we got people that way through posting that on Facebook. We got like a dozen people who wrote in who are willing to talk with us. Mm-hmm. That's an HR story. But another piece we did was, for people who work in cubicles, it can be kind of challenging at times with the microwave and noises and people's habits and things like that. So we did a story about cubicle etiquette. And for that, we did a Qualtrics survey and asked people to, send us their tips for how to work in a cubicle. And we got 50 tips or so. And we were able to pull some out. And we did a center spread in the print publication on cubicle etiquette. So that's one way we get content. So it's tough, but it's doable.
Can I guess if one of the cubicle etiquette pieces was don't be the guy or girl that microwaves the popcorn all the time or burns?
Well, it's don't heat up your tilapia fish sandwich in
Yeah.
the microwave.
Yeah, totally understandable. Do you get anecdotal feedback from the individuals who you're featuring in the stories? Because I'm thinking that they might get good feedback, themselves, or that might make them feel special and might make them feel more connected to the university that they've been featured by working at Duke.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it was a couple months ago. We have a program. It's a personal assistance service, which is an employee counseling service. Employees get up to, I think, 6 or 8 sessions at no charge per concern or issue. So we had an employee whose husband was diagnosed with cancer, and so understandably, she needed to go talk with someone. And so we did a story about, it was a story about her, but again, she represented the program that we were, trying to raise awareness about. And she wrote us to let us know that, like, after the story ran, she was in Best Buy or one of the, big box stores. And, an employee who knew her came up to her and was like, thank you for telling your story. So, again, I think that sums that up. It's great that we're able to do that.
That is fantastic. Going back to your piece about emergency communications,
Yes.
How do you all decide what rises to the level of being, for instance, a manager email? I think a lot of people have had these conversations on campuses, particularly with all of the things that have been happening in the world at large recently about events that are possibly outside of your campus, but then also just generally, what's kind of your bar that you use there?
Right. So I'm part of a larger team when it comes to the emergency communications, and it really begins with the vice president of Duke's administration, who meets and talks with, my boss, me. It really is a matter of something of importance. I mean, we're not going to send a manager communication out about, the latest special in the dining hall. But an example from today, I'm just making sure we've got a manager communication that went out today about the new minimum wage for Duke. And so these are big, institutional issues or changes that will be communicated. I mean, the one that I helped with, I think it was last week, if you're familiar or if you were watching, there were protests in Durham, related to the events of the last couple of weeks, and the statue downtown. And we have 3,000 employees in downtown Durham, and so there was a lot of misinformation on social media, tweeted out and shared by the public about potential problems downtown, and there were a lot of people. So eventually a decision was made to send the 3,000 employees downtown home so that they wouldn't be leaving at a time when there's a lot of congestion down there. So that was a manager email. So we really reserve those for, significant issues, but at the same time, we use the manager email to update managers on information. So, an example may be, it's also sent out, when you've got a sort of collection of items, helping managers link them to if they're hiring people over the summer, we link them to tips for getting through the hiring process, how to deal with depression in the workplace. So, if you've got a staff member who is depressed or, behavioral changes, sort of hook those managers up with helpful resources. And then, tech changes and things like that. So the manager email could take the form of an announcement, like today with the minimum wage, or last week with the campus protest, or the terror attack in Nice, or it could take the form of, 3 quick headlines and a link to information that helps managers connect with resources to help staff.
That's great. As far as media go, you mentioned that you added an e-newsletter last year. Why did you decide to add that medium to your portfolio? Did the surveys tell you? How did you make that decision?
World domination. I'm kidding. Well, okay, so there's a couple layers of questions, a couple of answers, but as everyone knows, I mean, no one's getting to your content through a homepage anymore. Our homepage traffic has drastically dropped, and so we need a way to get people to our content, and email is tough, but it's a channel. And then you've got social media. You know, e-newsletters are difficult. Everything from the subject line to getting people engaged with your content. People are busy, busy, busy. And even though we have the e-newsletter and we've got Duke Today, our print publications still, the results for that are still better than our online engagement.
Makes sense.
So
I think we're getting close to time here. So why don't we do this? Why don't you give out your email address just so everyone has it? Unfortunately, I don't have it on a screen.
Okay. So let me spell it. It's Leonora Manai. It's Leonora, L-E-A, N as in Nancy, O-R-A, .Manai, M as in Mary, I, N as in Nancy, A-I, @duke.edu.
And just so you don't get flooded with emails, I will tell everyone that behind the scenes, we're going to be able to get the PDF uploaded to higheredlive.com. So you don't have to email Leonora. I'm just letting you share your email address in case people have specific questions. But that PDF that she mentioned about the survey questions will actually be on higheredlive.com. So you don't have to contact her directly for that. Because I do think those questions will be really valuable to people to have that up there.
No problem.
So with that, we will wrap up. But I just want to thank our guest again, Leonora Manai from Duke University's Office of Communication Services. I think it was a really enlightening conversation and people got a lot out of it. And I know I got a lot out of it. So thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Sure. And thanks as always to our program sponsor, PRSA's Counselors to Higher Education. Don't forget to follow and more importantly, engage with us on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And if you can, join us next month for the West Coast Forum in San Francisco. There's still time to get that early saver rate. And we appreciate everyone for joining us today for this special edition of Higher Ed Live. Have a great day.